Thomas Hardy. He was born in 1840 and he died in 1928. He lived throughout the Victorian period. So, some background on Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was born in Stinsford, United Kingdom, and he died in Dorchester, United Kingdom. He was influenced both by his mother and his father, and he attended architectural school before becoming a poet. Hardy did most of his literary work in Wessex, and this is where he was mostly inspired to write. So here are just some of the pictures of his major works. So his first major work is The Mayor of Casterbridge. And then we have Far from the Madding Crowd. Then we have Tess of d'Iberville's, The Return of the Native, Jude the Obscure, and then my poem, Are You Digging on My Grave? But I didn't include it in there. So those are some of his major works. So how did Hardy become a writer? Becoming a writer. Thomas Hardy dropped out of college due to lack of money, and instead he became an Anglican priest, followed in his dad's footsteps after school. He spent most of his time alone, being a scribe in seminary for the other priests, reading and writing poetry and scripture. And so after reading some poetry, he began to write his own, and then he published his first work, Desperate Remedies, in 1871. So my timeline. On the left of the timeline, there is Hardy and what's going on in his life, and then on the right is the Victorian era. So the first thing under Thomas Hardy is in 1874 he wrote Far from the Madding Crowd. 1876 he wrote The Hand of Ethelberta. In 1882 he wrote Two in a Tower. 1886 he wrote The Mayor of Casterbridge. In 1888 he wrote The Wessex Tales. So in the Victorian era, we have 1875 Captain Matthew Webb becomes the first man to swim the English Channel. 1876 the telephone is invented. In 1881 London's Natural History Museum opens. In 1887 the gramophone is invented. And then in 1891 free education is available for children ages 5 to 13 in London. So some of Hardy's main followers during his period. Thomas Hardy wrote during the Industrial Revolution, which was a changing time during the Victorian era, and it was not even a change in machinery, but also a change in literature. So through his writings, we can see a great inspiration of people and inspire them to change their lives and change the way they looked at lives, because the people of the Victorian time period were accepted to change, and they wanted to see change, and that's what Thomas Hardy was mainly known for writing about, was change. And he encrypted it into his writings in many different ways. So some famous lines from Thomas Hardy. Time changes everything, except something within us, which is always surprised by change. Jonah Colin Brown. Do not do an immoral thing for moral reasons. It's from Jude the Obscure. And yet to every bad there is a worse, the Woodlanders. So my poem. The poem I had was Are You Digging on My Grave? And it's a short poem about a woman who continues to try and guess who the visitor digging on her grave might be. And she's let down each and every time she comes to figure out that it's not who she thinks it is. At the end of the poem, she figures out that it's her dog digging on the grave the whole entire time just to bury a bone, so he can have it on the walk that he walks every morning right past her grave. So the central theme of this poem would be death and disappointment. So what I think the poem is mainly about the end of our lives, or it's about death. So the first theme of the poem is disappointment. The entire time when reading, we can easily see how the speaker of this poem gets let down every time she figures out who the visitor on her grave is, and she continues to get let down throughout the poem. So these are my thoughts. So the second theme of the poem is death, or the end of our lives. And I think Hardy wrote this poem about someone who was experiencing the end of their lives, or was near the end of their life. And this is why the reader feels a sense of longing for the beginning of our lives that we always long for.